Last week, the House Speaker, Speaker Boehner, and President Obama and his administration were both calling for comprehensive tax reform as part of a large budget deal. Now, obviously, today that seems to have lost some momentum, and I just wanted to start this afternoon by saying that tax reform is too important to abandon after 48 hours worth of discussion. I was home. I had a chance to be across Eastern Oregon in small towns, and I think there's a keen awareness that it's not possible to cut our way out of this economic challenge. You also have to grow. You have to grow. You've got to make growth-oriented changes in tax law. I'm of the view that pro-growth tax reform, for example, is one of the few ways to generate revenue that both Democrats and Republicans will both support. When you put people to work, and we've got millions and millions of our fellow citizens out of work today, those are folks who can, in the private sector, start paying taxes again. That's what happened after the last major tax reform bill in 1986. In those 2 years, the 2 years after major tax reform, 6.3 million new jobs were created in the private sector. We have an opportunity to do that again. So we've thrown a lot of economic tools at this huge challenge. But we obviously have a lot more to do, and I don't see any more promising path than tax reform for the long-term economic growth that this country needs. In rural Oregon this weekend, the farmers were telling me about how they want to get their agricultural products into Asia and other markets around the world so we can grow things here, make things here, add value to them here, and ship them somewhere. That's what we'd like to be exporting. Instead, under the tax law, there's actually an incentive to export jobs. You set up shop overseas, and when you're doing business, overseas, you get to defer your American taxes. Senator Coates and I take that incentive that now goes for exporting jobs out of the United States and take those very same dollars and use those dollars to dramatically slash rates for companies that offer what I call red, white, and blue jobs here in this country. The time to make sure it's done is now. Senator Coates and I said earlier this month what we ought to do, recognizing that you can't write a complete tax reform bill between now and August 2nd. What we ought to do is get a commitment, really lock in a strategy to do comprehensive tax reform in the fall and early next year. That alone would send, in my view, a positive and bipartisan message to the financial markets of this country that there really were going to be some changes. So, Mr. President, what we need is a roadmap for economic growth. It was brought up to me over the weekend at home in Eastern Oregon, matters we've talked about before, like the alternative, minimum tax. Talk about something that just defies common sense. The idea that the alternative minimum tax would force middle-class people making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, a year, to fill out their taxes twice using two separate systems just defies any semblance of sanity. So, referring again to what happened, this weekend, are we really going to tell American taxpayers getting clobbered by the alternative minimum tax that after 2 days worth of discussion about tax reform, we're just going to walk away and pursue some other topic? That doesn't make any sense to me. In spite of what happened this weekend, in spite of this sense that maybe tax reform is going to be put off, yet again. I'm not going to give up for a minute. We're going to have another hearing that's going to be very important this week. Chairman Baucus, Chairman Camp, the Finance Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, getting together to talk about tax reform. So we know what needs to be done. Now it's a question of having the political will to go forward. I simply want to say to the President, I think I can say to the Senate today, Senator Coates and I, despite the idea that this is too hard to do, can't be done now, let's put it off for another time, we're going to come back to this floor and say again and again, it's been done. We need to do it now when there are so few other tools in the economic tool shed, and it would be wrong to walk away after this brief flurry of interest in something that is so fundamental to the economic well-being of millions of our people.